Hi everyone, I'm Dana Mentink, and I just wanted to read the first chapter of my newest book called Secrets Resurfaced. It is the last book of a 4-book series called The Roughwater Ranch Cowboys. So, Chapter 1, Show Yourself. Dory Winslow peered down into the darkening canyon, searching for her quarry in the lengthening shadows. Her muscles were cramped from crouching. Grit clung to her hair where it poked out from underneath her cap. If anyone saw her there, binoculars pressed to her eyes, face streaked with sweat from an unseasonably hot April, they might think she was a stalker. And in a way, they'd be right. She lifted the binoculars, careful to angle them so the failing sunlight would not strike the lenses. Rocks bit into her elbow where she squeezed against the granite shelf. Far below, the rising silver moonlight reflected off the ribbon of river that eventually meandered along to the ocean. She took in the twisted rock layers jutting here and there, white and porous. It might as well have been a desert canyon. Odd that not 2 miles away from this desolate spot was the magnificent central coast of California, a place where ranch land butted up to the sea, a breathtaking patch of grassland and surf unlike anything else. The faintest saltwater freshness trickled across her senses and reawakened the familiar sorrow. She could never picture the ocean without thinking of what she'd lost to it. Chad Jaggert, her life here in Driftwood, their future, all turned upside down by the voracious sea. She recalled the moment 5 years before when she'd heard the tragic news. Her father, a private investigator for the DA's office, had broken it to her as she returned from registering for her second semester of junior college classes. It had been exactly 1 month before her 20th birthday. "Honey, Chad's father wrecked his boat and killed someone. It looks like the fool was drinking. He's under arrest." Through the shock, she'd not missed the edge of satisfaction in her father's tone, as if the tragedy was a validation for what he told her since she started dating Chad. "He's no good for you. His family's a mess. You can do better than Chad Jaggert." Her dad despised Rocky Jaggert, pure and simple. Their rift had started long before she and Chad had ever met. Her heart had split wide open in that moment for Chad and his father, but that had only been the beginning of the mess. Now the rock walls seemed to squeeze in, punishing her for her decision to come back, even temporarily. "There's nothing for you here but pain," she could almost hear them whisper. "And answers," she mumbled through gritted teeth. She wasn't leaving without those. A scraping noise snapped her to attention. Was it the scuff of a boot on rocks, or the natural sounds of the wind and the weather? Frozen, she watched and listened. A bat winged over the canyon top. She tried to ease the cramp in her legs without changing position, a skill she'd learned over her 5-year span as a private investigator under her father's tutelage. Was the fugitive she sought finally within her sights? Had he heard her approach? Seen her jeep parked in the dense cluster of the forest that ringed the canyon? She ignored her screaming muscles and stayed stone still. Most of the time, stillness was more effective than running. It had been a hard-earned lesson. Her father had drilled 3 things into Dory's head. Do your research, call the cops when appropriate, collect your fee. But there was one other rule she hadn't followed this time. Always let someone know your location during a pursuit. Dory had not told a single soul her plans to return to Driftwood. It would be smart to send a text to her father now to inform him of where she was in case things went wrong, but that would require explanation she was not prepared to give. Besides, she told herself, even if she wanted to, she probably couldn't get a signal. She was tucked so deep in the twisted nowhere. She was on her own, as she had been since Chad cut her out of his life. Her fingers found the silver heart locket. No, not alone, she reminded herself. This time she heard the unmistakable sound of movement from below. She focused the lenses, breath catching as she saw a hooded figure hiking along the stone-littered trail. She picked out the red glow of a cigarette. Blaze was a smoker, that much she knew. All the other attributes appeared to fit her target as well. She pegged him at mid-20s, tall and skinny, and was that a glimpse of dark red hair she caught from underneath the hood? A hefty pack weighed the guy down, and he stopped to flick ash off his cigarette. He had the comfortable gait of someone familiar with the terrain. A shiver went up her spine. Her info had been right. Blaze was holing up in the canyon. Why, she couldn't imagine, but now was not the time to speculate. She eased out her cell phone to take a picture, but her elbow sent a rock into motion. She froze. "Someone there?" Blaze called. She willed every nerve to quiet, every muscle to still. After a moment, he took another drag on his cigarette and continued walking. She let out a gusty breath at how close she'd come to blowing it. She had to get a photo first, to prove he was whom she suspected. Then there would be time for questions. She'd used every arsenal in her PI toolbox, but it hadn't been very easy. Her quarry had not accessed an ATM or credit card that she was aware of. He'd given a fake name, Brian Upton, at the halfway house where he'd last stayed, and ridden buses or thumbed rides instead of renting a car. But Dory was very good at what she did. She had the patience and tenacity. It paid her bills. Only this time, she wasn't after a paycheck. This time, it was personal. "I know who you really are," Dory whispered to herself, "and you're going to tell me the rest of your secrets right here and right now."